That's hello, hello, welcome back, come back, we're back. Oh, I'll be back. Oh, let's see the FPS on the tab. Oh, no, it is impossible. Go back. Back. Oh, unpop the jetpack. Go, go, go. Hmm? Hmm? That's the one. That's the one. What is that? See? See? Mm-hmm. Let's press on. He's popping. What's this for? Hmm. 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 There's something here. Hmm. Hmm. I can pass here. Hmm. Hmm. Something falls. No. There's something here. Okay. Can walk over here. No. 很多的购物书哦。哇，pick it up. Just here. Something is here. That's all. Something here. This one. Right? This one. No. Oh, no. No, no, no.
Explosion, whatever. In principle, according to all the laws of nature that we know, if you collected everything that came off, all the radiation, all the bits of ashes and things, and you could just measure it all, then just in principle, the idea is you could reconstruct the information. So it all gets scrambled up and thrown out into, and so in practice you can't do it, but just in principle, the laws of nature say that information is not destroyed, it's just scrambled up in a way that you can't reconstruct, right? But this calculation that Stephen did said there is no information in that radiation at all. Zero, just nothing. So it seemed that uniquely in the universe, black holes erase information.
This episode is brought to you by the farmer's dog. Dogs are amazing. They're loyal, they're lovable. Like, just having Marshall around can make my day 10 times better. And I'm sure you love your dog just as much, and you want to do your best to help them live longer, healthier, happier lives. And a healthy life for your dog starts with healthy food, just like it does for us. There's a reason having a balanced diet is so important. So how do you know if your dog's food is as healthy and as safe as it can be? Well, Farmer's Dog gives you that peace of mind by making fresh, real food developed by board-certified nutritionists to provide all the nutrients your dog needs. And their food is human grade, which means it's made to the same quality and safety standards as human food. Very few pet foods are made to this strict standard. And let's be clear, human grade food doesn't mean the food is fancy, just means it's safe and healthy. It's simple, real food from people who care about what goes into your dog's body. The Farmer's Dog makes it easy to help your dog live a long, healthy life by sending you fresh food that's pre-portioned just for your dog's needs. Because every dog is different. And I'm not just talking about breeds, from their size to their personality.
Why can't we escape tomorrow? Right, so we are going to tomorrow.
Right.
And if I said to you, let's run away from tomorrow, you'd go, I can't run away from tomorrow.
So is it the end of time because all information is being erased, so there's nothing?
Yeah, I mean,
is that the idea?
If you draw the thing, you can draw a map of it, and it just literally time ends, just purely in Einstein's theory. This is 1915, his theory of general relativity. You just get a line there, a line that says there's no future beyond this line. It just stops.
Okay.
So, I mean, admittedly, that's not. We think there's a lot more to it than that.
But is it just we haven't figured the rest of it out yet?
Well, that's the thing. So we're starting to get hints about what might happen, which is leading us. So to backtrack a bit, why does this calculation Stephen did? Why has it got no information? Why does it say there's no information in this radiation? The thing is, it's coming from the horizon. So it's all there's loads of ways to think about it, but one way is that this weird place, this point of no return in space that you can fall through, but it's a point of no return. It sort of shakes, it almost disrupts the vacuum of space and sort of almost shakes particles out of the vacuum. That's one way of thinking about it. But this radiation is coming from the vacuum, it's coming from empty space. Whereas if you think about the thing that I throw in, if I throw this notepad into the thing, then that goes to the singularity. It's got nothing to do, the radiation's got nothing to do with this thing. This thing is not set on fire or something like that. It's gone to the end of time, and just whatever's happened to it has happened to it. So this radiation's got nothing to do with anything that falls in, at first sight at least. And so that was the paradox. It's called the black hole information paradox. It's like, it's one way to put it is the laws of nature that we use to calculate what happens tell us that information is never destroyed. And when you calculate what happens, it tells us that information is destroyed. So that's why everyone got interested in it in the 80s, because it's interesting.
So when we're looking at the structure of the universe, obviously there's so much still to learn just about what's out there, but what role do we think? Like, what is the? Is there a purpose? Is that the right term? Like for a black hole? Like what? Obviously, we know. Is it still the do they still believe that in the center of every galaxy there's a supermassive black hole that's, what is it, 1/2 of 1% of the mass of the galaxy? Is that what it is?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and that's there's occasionally a galaxy. I think one was discovered where we said maybe we can't see evidence of a black hole, but I think
really?
So probably is what.
What do you think that thing's doing there? Like, what is that? What's the what is the structure? The structure is so insanely complex and so immense, and you see these things everywhere. And so, what purpose do you think they serve in the universe?
So, I mean,
is that a right? It might not be the right term.
Well, so I think we don't. I think I'm right in saying we don't fully understand why all galaxies, as you said, maybe there's an exception, but all galaxies have a black hole, a supermassive black hole in the centre. It's obviously got something to do with the way they form. And one of the purposes, by the way, of the James Webb Space Telescope is to try to look at the formation of the first galaxies. So that's one of the reasons that telescope is up there. So it's cutting edge research. We're trying to understand how the galaxies form. But I clearly, you're right, that it has something to do with the way the galaxies form in the early universe.
Pulling in stars.
Well, they do pull in material.
Right.
But if you've got stuff orbiting around them, it stays orbiting around it.
Oh.
So the way we first detected the one in the Milky Way, before we could, because that image is very new that we have of it, is the stars orbiting it very close to it. And they're called the S stars that whiz around in these orbits very close to it. So if you just orbiting around the thing, you go.
Imagine that view.
Yeah, because
you think it's weird to look at the moon? Imagine if there was a supermassive black hole above our heads.
Very cool. I'd love to see one.
That'd be so cool. A big clips, it's incredible. It's so it was incredible.
And I got this feeling that I was living on a ball of rock. Because, and it must have been just because the night just falls.
Right.
And suddenly you see the universe comes much more quickly.
I went to the Keck Observatory once in Hawaii. I've been a few times, but one time I went on the perfect night with no moon, and it was sensational.
Yeah.
It was the most. It was such a vivid image of the entire Milky Way, and every. Like, this is what every day, and this would radically shape the way human beings feel about our place in the universe.
Yeah.
It would greatly expand the curiosity of young people.
Yeah.
To explore space. So many more people would get involved in astrophysics. So many more people would get involved in just the exploration of the known universe. It's so majestic. We have like our stars like that. We see that should be read. That is like, well, lights are wonderful, but it seems like there's got to be a way to do that.
You know, the question we have about our. You said it can be easily myopic.
Yes.
It's Earth at most. And most of us don't really think about Earth. You think about your country or your city or your town
or your neighborhood.
Yeah, even think about the Earth. But you're right. If you know when you look at that arc of stars, and as you said, when you see it in a truly dark sky, it's powerful.
It's incredible.
400 billion suns, give or take. 400,000 million suns.
That's just words.
Most. Yeah, it's
you know what I'm saying?
Picture.
Yeah, it's insane. I could repeat that. If someone says, "How many suns?" Oh, 400 billion. I don't know what that means. That's so abstract.
And most of them, I think, the best guess would be all of them have planets. So pretty much. So you're talking about trillions of planets.
Disclosure stuff. Do you get in the mind at all?
There's a thing called the Fermi paradox we talked about, which is the paradox is that if we haven't seen it. Let's assume we haven't seen it. That's a paradox, because as I said, we now know. We don't confirm it. We now know there's so many Milky Way's been there for 13 billion years. So if there's no one else out there, then the question is why? Because there's been so much time and so many places for civilizations to become spacefaring civilizations.
Right.
As Elon talks about multi-planetary civilization, we're very once you have become a multi-planetary and multi-stellar civilization, if you become that, you're immortal, basically, essentially.
Right.
So the question is, the paradox is, why does it appear nobody has done that? So the first thing to say is, I would not be surprised, right? If a UFO landed here now in the parking lot, I'd actually, not only would I not be surprised, I'd be relieved, actually. Because I'd be like, this is good, because it'd be a weight off my shoulders, because I'm worried
that
we're the only ones.
That's a terrifying scenario.
And we're going to make a mess of it.
Yeah.
And so I'm worried that we could talk about that.
But isn't it bizarre? Like, one of the things that's fascinating about looking into the night skies, because it's so humbling, because it's so immense, it kind of puts everything into perspective, and it just gives you this, like, different view of the world. So the universe is so vast and so spectacular. Why is it so important that we exist? To us, it's so important that we exist. And if we make a mess of this and we wind up dying, the universe is so big. If we were the only intelligent life in the universe, and it didn't matter, we blew ourselves up, like, a weird aberration that's attached to a survival instinct. Like, we're a weird biological aberration.
Oh.
So that if you think about, let's assume, so we didn't finish the UAP thing.
Yeah, we'll get that.
So I was just saying, yeah. So I don't know about that, but anyway, let's assume, just for the purposes of this, that we're the only ones in our galaxy, let's say.
Okay.
Then I would argue that, so there's a question I ask in these live shows that I do. I start with a question which is kind of a joke in a way, which is, what does it mean to live a finite, fragile life in an infinite, eternal universe? Which is a good question, right? That's what you're asking.
Yeah.
What does it mean to live a finite?
Right.
The first thing to say is meaning, right? What does it mean? That doesn't sound like a scientific concept in a way. Meaning.
Right.
I would argue that whatever it is, it self-evidently exists because the universe means something to us. I would argue that it's a property of complex biological systems. So whatever it is, it's something that emerges, in this case, from human brains. It self-evidently exists. Everyone who's listening to this knows that the world means something to them. So I would argue that if this planet is the only planet in our galaxy where complex biological systems exist, right, at our level, then it follows it's the only place where meaning currently exists in a galaxy of 400 billion suns. And therefore, I would argue, just for that very basic point, that we have a tremendous responsibility in some sense. Because by the way, I gave a talk, a little video thing at one of the climate summit, the COP climate summit in Glasgow in the UK a few years ago, and they asked me to do a little video to the world leaders, and I think they thought I'd say, welcome to Glasgow, have a nice meeting. But I made this little argument as fast as I could. I said it's possible, at least, that this is the only place where complex biology has emerged in our galaxy. If that's true, this is the only island of meaning in a galaxy of 400 billion suns, and you are responsible for it because you are the world leaders. Therefore, if you destroy it through deliberate action or inaction, then each of you would be personally responsible for destroying meaning in a galaxy of 400 billion suns, potentially forever. Now go and discuss that. Was my intro to Glasgow. Now, and we can all argue, because people will be listening to this going, "This nonsense, how can it be?" We can all argue about whether that's true. What I would say is, given that, as far as I'm aware, we don't have any good evidence to the contrary, which goes back to your previous question, it's a reasonable working assumption. So why don't we just operate on that basis? And then, if someone lands tomorrow, as I said, I'd be very delighted, because then what I just said would be false, and we could relax a bit and go, it doesn't really matter if we destroy ourselves to some extent. But so I think it's worth taking seriously the idea that civilizations are very rare. Now, and by the way, I used to say So probably last time I was on, actually, I used to say that in the far future, then the complex life will cease to exist. So it probably doesn't matter on a global scale, but it matters locally because of this idea that meaning emerges from complex biological systems. So if you don't care about that, what do you care about? But actually, I read a book. Have you had David Deutsch on the show? David Deutsch is a really interesting physicist.
I don't believe I have.
He's one of the
No.
founders of quantum computing, and so
Okay.
he's a big figure in quantum computing in particular, but he's a great thinker. And I was reading some stuff he wrote recently. He pointed out that it's not necessarily true that life is temporary, because you could imagine a situation as you go into the far future. Let's imagine that we continue for 1 million years or 1 billion years as a civilization. Imagine what we could do. It is possible that life can get so advanced in the universe that it can start to manipulate the universe itself. So, or at least stars. You could he said you could imagine, for example, just imagine, really wild speculation, but imagine life gets so advanced that it can start to change the destiny of a star. Maybe it could start to add material into the star or something,
Right.
whatever. So we don't know how to do that, or if it's possible, but imagine it could. Then the evolution of stars life would matter in the sense that it could start to change the way that the universe behaves on a large scale in the future. And so it reminded me, actually, there's another great book by John Barrow and Frank Tipler called The Anthropic Cosmological Principle from the 1980s. It's one of my favourite books, actually, and I remembered it. And in there, they speculate about this life in the far, far future. And if it became powerful enough to manipulate the whole universe, or the observable universe, then suddenly you
It's
can't
God.
make predictions about the far future unless you consider the possible impact of life on the universe. And whilst this is, I should say, it's wildly speculative, but it's actually logically, it's quite an interesting point. So I kind of disagree with myself a few years ago, where I would have said that life is extremely valuable because it brings meaning to the universe, but temporarily. And so it brings these brief, like, flickering candles of meaning, and then they go out again. But it's worth considering. It might not necessarily be true that if you really think. I mean, just to say, I mean, it must sound to many people listening just nonsense, right? Science fiction. But if you think our civilization has been around for 10,000 years at best, really, give or take, and in that time we've sent stuff out of the solar system. Although we don't yet, we're way away from being able to manipulate stars, we can manipulate planets. So we are changing the way this planet operates. Life has changed it. The oxygen in the atmosphere, before we appeared, the oxygen in the atmosphere is a product of life. So life already, we know, changes planets. And so I like that speculation that just possibly, it's not just a temporary little phenomena that flickers in and out and then disappears again. It could have a real bearing on the future of the universe.
And you could also make the argument that intelligent life might be the universe's way to force change. That intelligent life seems to inevitably, like, intelligence itself must come out of curiosity, because otherwise there's no reason to seek information. So intelligent life consistently seeks information and then constantly demands innovation. Like, intelligent life is not satisfied with the iPhone 14 and wants the 15, and wants the 16, and wants to keep going forever and ever and ever. Well, if you scale that up, you get this current dilemma that we're in with just artificial intelligence and the concept of sentient artificial intelligence, and then quantum computing. You get insane amounts of computing power powered by nuclear reactors that are essentially a life form. Well, if that thing says, you guys are doing it all wrong, I got a better way, and it starts making better versions of itself because it's sentient, if you scale up 1,000 years from now, you could imagine it becoming God. Like a godlike property, like an unstoppable force that has access to every element in known space.
I'm really interested in these kind of arguments. You put it really well, actually.
It's fascinating, right?
It's
Because it
really
scales
is.
up. If you go from look, just in the time that like in the 4 billion years, which is a blip in the universe, right? And I wanted to ask you about that too. The James Webb Telescope's latest. If just take that, okay, life has been around for what, 4 billion years? That's not that long. So 4 billion years, we've gone from single-celled organisms to the James Webb Telescope. We have Starlink, we have electric car. It's like bananas.
Yeah.
You could imagine if we had another 10 billion years to exist.
Well, exactly, and this is the point that David Deutsch made in the book I've just been reading, and John Barrow and Frank Tipler made before that. That although it sounds insane, that,
right.
as you said, and that 4 billion years, there's a lot to say about that, by the way, because for 3 billion plus years on this planet, it was just single cells, and so it's only in the last, let's say, 1 billion years, but actually a bit less, that we've had multicellular organisms. So 3/4 of the time were just single cells.
That's even crazy.
So, which is one of the reasons that many people think civilizations might be rare. Because if you just the only evidence we have is this planet.
Right.
And the evidence on this planet is that single cell life is sort of the way that things are for most of the history. And then so it seems like an accident in a way that happened late on in the history of the planet that produced multicellular life. Now, whether is that typical? We don't know. Maybe it took a longer time here than it might do somewhere else. But if it's typical, I mean, 4 billion years, you said it's not a long time. It is a third of the age of the universe. So here,
When you put it that way, it's a long time.
1/3 of the age of the universe to go from the origin of life to a civilization. And so what was required was that unbroken chain of life remained unbroken for a third of the age of the universe in a violent universe. We know that impacts from space, many stars are significantly more active than the sun. So the sun's kind of quite a boring little star that ticks along. It's very nice to us. We're also on the edge of the galaxy, by the way. We're not close in. If you go into this region where that black hole is, there are a lot of stars around. There's supernova explosions and all sorts of stuff going on. So it's violence in there. So maybe you can only get unbroken chains of life for billions of years on the outskirts of the galaxy. So there are fewer stars and planets out there. And maybe even then you need to be fortunate.
Well, also, aren't we very unusual in the size of our moon and the distance?
The moon, it is big, and so it stabilizes the spin. So the spin axis, Mars, I think, if I'm right, I think the spin axis is wobbled around by something like 60 degrees or something. Do you imagine that? Imagine Earth was the pole wobbling around and everything was falling over. You wouldn't imagine that complex life like us would emerge on a planet like that.
Right, it would be too difficult to survive, forget about innovate. So if you think about the idea that these complex, it seems like one thing you can be sure of in the observable world is that things get more complex or they adapt to their environment. And if you have a bunch of these intelligent apes that are competing globally with the most significant technology in the world, you can see how that would be just a property of the universe potentially. Although we haven't discovered it yet, like this is why we're so curious about alien life. Not just because of the possibilities of all the stars, but because we kind of see what would happen with us if we keep going.
Yeah.
You know, that might be just what the universe does. That the universe creates intelligent people that create artificial intelligence that becomes far superior and literally is a part of the whole process of creating the universe itself.
Yeah, an evolutionary biologist would say the counter argument is that what life does, what evolution does, is produce organisms that are well fitted to their environment. Right? So they fit niches in the environment. But there's no drive to complexity. There's no law that says that the more complex you are, the more likely you are to survive. And the example of life on Earth probably backs that up. So if you talk about 3 billion years of single cells, what that means is that the single-celled organisms were just doing very well.
Right.
And so it's not obvious, it's not a given that just because you suddenly get more complicated, you're better than the single-celled things.
Right. So there could
exist.
be planets where life never evolves past single cells, but
Yeah,
that
and
life exists.
Earth was almost that.
Right.
So you go back 1 billion years from now, and Earth was that planet. So the interesting things have happened: photosynthesis, complex biochemistry. But as far as we can tell, nothing more complex than a single cell. So that's most of the history of life on Earth. So that might suggest that that's the way that things are usually.
And this is an aberration.
Yeah, and again, emphasize, we don't know.
Right.
But we've got one example. The other observation, though, it goes back to your first question. It is true that we do look sort of systematically for signals or evidence of civilizations out there. There's the Breakthrough Listen project, and there's the SETI, is it? So we do, and we haven't seen anything, I would say. And I know that if you go onto the web and things, and the internet, people say, we've seen stuff, and I've seen stuff, but just the basic point, as far as I know, scientifically speaking, we haven't seen anything at all compelling.
No.
Basically nothing.
Basically nothing.
And so astronomers have a name for it. They call it the Great Silence. The Great Silence. And it's a tremendous mystery, as I said earlier. But it does seem that the universe is quiet.
Is it possible that we're looking for something that is not applicable to this particular type of civilization?
Yeah, there are different. So the counter arguments when we say we've seen nothing, therefore, as far as we can tell, there's nothing out there. You could say, well, what if the civilization that evolved is far ahead of us? What if the space probes are the size of an iPhone?
Right.
Well, that's kind of a reasonable thing to say, actually.
Sure.
Why would you not, if you can build a little thing,
right.
It's easier to send around the galaxy than a big thing.
Yeah.
So why would you not, as you said, these ultra intelligent quantum computers, why would they not be tiny?
Right.
So you could say that. So you could say, well, that maybe they are. Maybe they're all over the solar system, but they're the size of phones, and we wouldn't have seen them. And so, yeah, okay,
yeah.
You would have to concede that. So we're just saying that the way that we've looked for energy signatures, for example, of civilizations, we tend to look for big things because that's all we can see. And we don't see any big things. We don't see any big structures. We don't see any evidence of spacecraft and all that kind of stuff. But I could make an argument that, well, why would the spacecraft be big?
Right.
Because, as you said, it's another thing you said, actually. It's interesting that we're on the verge now of creating things, artificially intelligent things, which are smarter than us. So I think everyone agrees that we're on the verge of doing that, artificial general intelligence. Some people might think it's further away than others. Yeah, you've probably had people on the show who said it's 5 years away, or 2 years away, or 50 years away, but it's probably not 10,000 years away.
Right.
So which is the blink of an eye. Once you've done that, and once you've got those things, I find it hard to believe that if we get that far as a civilization, we won't begin to send those things out to the planets and ultimately to the stars. So we'll begin that process if we survive long enough.
Sure.
And it shouldn't be too much longer. Might be 100 years, might be 10,000 years, but we should do it. So it becomes a powerful question. So why does it appear that nobody's done that? And my guess, in the absence of other evidence, would be biology. It's just that maybe the number of places where biology becomes complex enough to do that is on average 1, maybe on average 0 per galaxy. Maybe just civilizations are very, very, very rare in the universe. Maybe that's an answer, but that's a guess.
My question is always, when it gets to artificial intelligence, if we do create some sort of super intelligent sentient life, it's not going to have any motivations. And you could say, well, if you program it to have the motivations, when it becomes sentient, it recognizes the illogical programming, it's going to reject it. We've already seen evidence of that. We've already seen evidence of artificial intelligence they use now, like giving a time limit to solve a problem. Doesn't like the time limit, gives itself more time. Like it's like they're maneuvering and thinking, right? So I assume that they would do that. So why would they want to explore? Isn't curiosity a part of what it means to be a biological thing that has to worry about instincts? You have human reward systems. You want to breed. You want to take care of your DNA. You want to protect your community. These biological things that are from us being intelligent animals. If we transcend that, or if life transcends that to the point, whatever we want to call this intelligence that's in a digital form, that's far superior to our intelligence, what motivations would it have? It's not greedy. It doesn't have lust. It doesn't have the desire to control resources. It might have like some sort of mandate to stay functional. But other than that, what's it going to do? Well, why would it do anything? And that might be ultimately where we go to. This idea that everything has to keep progressing, we have to build bigger skyscrapers, that might be stupid. That might be nonsense. And intelligence might find a way to exist in a much more static state where it doesn't have any desire to expand.
There's a lot of points in there, and it's so you're right. What you're arguing, I suppose, is whether intelligence is integral to the structure, the biological structure,
Yes.
or whether
Yes.
it is a separate thing. And I think so. Again, I think the answer is it's not known. You could argue either way, but the counter argument would be that the brain, these things, are just computers. Ultimately, there's nothing magical in there. There's nothing that it is connected to a body, and so there are these sensations. But it doesn't seem to me impossible that a silicon-based life form or whatever it is, obviously it has sensors, it has access to the environment, it exists, it thinks. I don't see any fundamental difference between an intelligence based on silicon, let's say, or a quantum computer or whatever it is, and this intelligence here. So I know that many researchers in this area do say that it's not a brain. They call it a brain in a jar, don't they? And say, well, that's not.
Right.
It needs to be connected to all this. This is part of our intelligence, and that's surely true as well.
Sure.
So it's a very good question, but I suppose you can say it's not obvious to me that a different kind of intelligence in a different structure running on a computer or whatever it is would necessarily have different motivations to us. I mean, you could equally well argue that these motivations to survive and curiosity and those ideas, the desire to explore, you could argue those are fundamental properties of intelligence and not of biology.
But isn't it intelligence that's motivated by a finite life and a vulnerable physical frame? Because we were constantly, most innovation relies upon quicker, safer transportation, more secure buildings, things along those lines, and then computers that help you do your job better and actually can do things that you can't do. And a lot of it is based on this other weird thing we do where we want to control resources. And we want to figure out reasons why these people are bad so we can go and take their stuff and then enter troops and dig the oil or whatever you have to do. Look, we're constantly in this battle for resources that, if you take it back to tribal times, it's like a natural human instinct. Like we had to protect the food sources, we had to fight off the conquering tribes, you had to protect your DNA line. All of these things are why we became innovative. We had a motivation to stay alive and to thrive. And then there's bastardizations of those motivations, like the stock market, where things gets weird, and you're just competing over numbers. It gets really weird. But it's basically this desire to compete with the DNA that's around you. Once we're not biological anymore, like what would be the motivation? And would we not just exist, like in the most peaceful Zen Buddhist way possible, which is what everybody who's like a spiritual person who meditates all the time, that's what you strive for.
Yeah.
You strive for this complete abandonment of self, this complete emptiness and one with the universe. If we could just exist like that, why would we need to go to space?
It's a wonderful argument, isn't it, that our humanity, because part of the thing that you described, this desire to create things and build things and explore and expand is almost the definition of being human, isn't it?
Yes.
And so the idea that if you remove all threat and you essentially become immortal,
Yes.
then you're almost saying, what's the point? It's my t-shirt. It's
Yeah.
existence. what does it matter, right? By the way, that's this T-shirt was, I got to say, it was designed by a friend of mine, Peter Saville, who's a great designer. He designed the Joy Division Unknown Pleasures album cover, amongst other things.
Oh wow, that's
and this
cool.
Is
that's
the Joy Division.
Shirt.
The Joy Division.
Is that available on your website or anything?
It probably is, but I'm not going to do that because it's vulgar, isn't it?
No, it's cool. I want to buy one. That's why I asked.
He made it for. We did these gigs. I talk about them later, called Symphonic Horizons, which were the shows with cosmology, but also a symphony orchestra. And he was exploring these issues actually. But most of the music was Strauss's Zarathustra, which is based on Nietzsche's book. So it's kind of exploring these questions actually of what's the point of existence.
Right.
And I do have some sympathy with that idea that a great deal of our humanity comes from our fragility. Mm-hmm. And so your question, I think, is fascinating. What happens when you become godlike? You said it earlier.
Right.
If you acquire so much knowledge that you're essentially a god by any description, and so much power, and you become effectively immortal, which is what our descendants in the far future could be. As you said, these AI descendants. What's the point?
Not
of
just
living?
effectively immortal, but aren't we looking at the universe itself we're looking at through the framing of a biological primate that's trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
If they understand the universe completely, and they understand everything about it, and they exist inside of it, there would really be no desire to travel. There'd be no desire to explore what you already understand about everything, and you probably have access to every single aspect of what subatomic particles are actually doing when we're studying them. We're like, what's going on? If you're infinitely more intelligent than we are, if you scale it from now to quantum computing, sentience, artificial intelligence, and you give us 1,000 years without getting hit by an asteroid, or technology gets to the point where it can protect against super volcanoes and there's no natural disruptions, and then they've completely eliminated violence on Earth. They've completely eliminated all the terrible primate genetic instincts. You could make a reasonable argument there's no reason to travel, or if you do travel, we might be confused in thinking that our physical form is the only way consciousness can reach specific destinations. There might be a way that they're traveling without actually being here and observing this, and just, I would imagine if you watch chimps in the jungle and then all of a sudden they started to figure out bombs, you'd be like, okay, we might want to go tell these chimps not to fucking blow each other up. I mean, it's an absurd premise, but if a chimp figured out a nuclear bomb, I think we'd step in. I think we'd say, hey, dude, no. You're gonna kill everything. Now, if you're infinite, look, we're not that removed from chimps. What do we share, like 98% of their DNA?
Yeah.
And we're only removed from them by what, a few million years from a nearest cousin? That's not that long, right? So you could imagine something that's infinitely more intelligent looking at us exactly the way we'd look at a chimp with a nuclear bomb. Like, hey. In which, you know, my club is called the Comedy Mothership, and we designed it. It's all UFO themed, and the rooms are Fat Man and Little Boy. Yeah. And the reason why I named it that, because that was the beginning of all the UFO sightings in the country. Yeah. Like, those bombs sort of set off the alarm for the universe. Oh, the monkeys have a bomb.
Yeah, I mean, I thought of this a while ago. I remembered I was talking to someone, and they said, yeah, are you not worried about this? Are you not worried about the fact that AI could become more intelligent than us? What is it going to be like when we're not the smartest things on the planet?
Right.
Which might be just a few years from
now.
And I might be quite relieved, because I'm not sure they could fuck it up at the level that we're fucking it up. You know, so it's,
you would have to give it legitimate sentience. Like, it would have to be completely independent from any ideology, and it would have to look at things completely objectively. But imagine a government that is run that way. Like, really run in a way where there is an actual distribution of resources for all the human beings on the planet, so poverty is instantaneously eradicated. You give electricity and clean water to everyone on Earth immediately. Immediately we figure out how to distribute healthy food. Immediately all the toxins and preservatives that have been giving people cancer, immediately they're removed from the human diet. They immediately make sure that we have no polluting of rivers, that we're not draining all the fish out of the ocean. Immediately change all of the treaties about nuclear weapons. All the nuclear weapons got to go. This
Well, I imagine
AI
they would.
government just runs over
I
everything.
imagine they'd
No
say
more
that immediately.
dictators. Yeah,
You're not having-
no more
you're
dictators.
not having that.
Cut the shit with the dictator. We're just going to let human beings exist in harmony, guided by this super intelligent, godlike thing that we've created out of silicon.
Yeah, honestly, I've had the same thought.
That's the utopian view.
Yeah, and so I have thought, how could it be worse? In fact, it could be significantly better. Yeah.
AI gets fucked with by people, right? And the AI we've seen so far has all the greasy fingerprints of human emotion and illogical. Like when Google released their AI, they asked them to show photographs, create images rather, of Nazi soldiers. So they did a diverse group of Nazi soldiers, including an African American woman, an Asian woman, a Native American woman with braids was a Nazi. The whole it's so nuts because it's like, okay, somebody fucked with this. This doesn't make any sense. You can't do that, because if you get a virus, an illogical virus that somehow or another gets into AI and it's unchecked, if AI isn't completely logical and objective and sentient and basing it just entirely on what's best for the human race, then you just have a superpower that you have control over, and then you can decide, like, no more abortions. You can decide exactly.
Well, and as you said, what the definition of what is best is a moral decision that we make.
But you can make some distinctions in terms of like allocation of resources. Like you could make some. If I was a super intelligence and I looked at Earth, I'd say, listen, a lot of people are not going to like this, but there's a reality. There's the reason why you're worried about the border, because people are sneaking in, is because other parts of the world are fucking terrible. So that needs to be cleaned up. That needs to be fixed. We need to figure out how to raise, instead of spending money on blowing people up, let's spend all this money to raise up all of civilization so there's no more third world.
Well, that's one of the arguments. Have you I spoke to Robert Zubrin, who I know wrote these wonderful books called about colonizing space, and so he's a fascinating character. And I spoke to him once, and he made this very simple argument that, as you said, one of the problems we have is competition for resources. And of course, the competition for resources is now so extreme that it's not only wars that it creates and always has, but it's also, of course, we damage the planet if we overexploit the resources and so on, right? So you've got this problem about resources. And he's right. He would say this is the number one motivation for going up, because there are, in fact, infinite resources out there.
Right.
And so once you begin to have access to the asteroids and access to Mars and beyond, you can imagine a world where you alleviate that pressure.
And ladies, I want to tell you, there's a planet out there bigger than Earth that's all diamonds.
There are diamond planets. There's unlimited.
Isn't that
nature's
insane?
Imagination
But
far
that
exceeds our own.
Isn't it like several times larger than Earth, and it's an entire diamond?
Yeah, and I think it's Neptune or Uranus that we think has diamonds in it. So.
Oh my goodness.
And
diamonds are only valuable because we decide they're valuable.
Yeah.
It's kind of the De Beers people are brilliant. They like lock them all up. They're like, oh, this is really hard to get.
They're good for drill bits as well. But we can make them for drill bits.
But this is the interesting thing. You can make them for jewelry as well, but some women don't want them.
Don't want the artificially.
No, they want the real ones. They want the ones that came out of the earth
the way
only.
that we value things. Gold.
Yes.
Gold is another example, right? It's valuable because there isn't very much of it.
Right. There's so little of it. It's like a football field, right?
Yeah.
A football field of gold in the whole world.
You know, by the way, that we were talking about the gravitational wave detectors earlier, and the collision between black holes we detect with them. We also detected a collision between neutron stars using the gravitational wave detector. And we pointed optical telescopes at that collision and saw the signature of gold being manufactured. And it was always a question. We used to just think, well, it comes from supernova explosions. But it also seems now that it comes from the collision between neutron stars. So one of the reasons that it's very rare is because it takes rare processes in the universe to actually make it. Which makes it all the more wonderful when you think about it. If you look at the gold, your wedding ring or your watch or whatever it is, that some of those nuclei, some of those elements clearly came from the collision between neutron stars at some point before our solar system was formed.
Wow.
Which makes it more wonderful.
Well, every human being is a carbon-based life form, and carbon comes from
stars. Yeah, as Carl Sagan said,
Whoa.
star stuff.
That's the craziest thing ever. Like, you need a star to blow up to make a person in the first place.
It's a remarkable thing. I wanted to go back to something you said actually about the. I've been thinking about this. What you said, this godlike intelligences that we might create, and kind of what's the point? What would be the point of existence if you were immortal and you knew everything? Wouldn't it be
I don't know,
incredibly dull? Like you said, it's almost like a meditative state.
Yeah.
So we strive for this peace, essentially.
Well, maybe we're thinking of it as dull because we don't have access to the information. Like, we have a very limited amount of senses. We have hearing and sight and taste and touch, and it's very limited, right? Why would we assume that is the only way to perceive things? If you could become infinitely intelligent, you could legitimately perceive neutrinos. Right? Like, if we have this thing that detects the ripples from black holes colliding, that might be a feature of a future human body. If we have an unbelievable capacity for information because it's artificially created, so we get over this biological limitation of long-scale evolution, like a really good, like the human brain doubled over 2 million years, and it's the biggest mystery in the entire fossil record. Like, what happened? All these theories, but that's a long fucking time. In 2 million years of technology, we can become God, or a god-like being, a thing that. But it might be how the universe creates itself. The universe might facilitate that through these biological beings fighting over resources and territory, which ultimately leads to innovation, which ultimately leads to cities and agriculture, which ultimately leads to safety, which leads to schools, and people start sharing information. You get curious people that figure things out, and you have to battle ideologies along the way, which makes you work harder.
Okay.
We all look back, look what they did to Galileo, and everybody has these, you can't...
Shut the fuck up. Can you imagine I'm in 94? Oh. What? Huh? Huh? Something like that. Hmm? Oh. Mhm. Mhm. Swimming pool jump. Yeah. More jump, jump. Right. Well, what? Hey, stand still. I want to have a caption. Okay. I also thought. The beginning and have something of beginning have as an A. Yep. Okay. Oh, no way. People. Wait, what's again? shit. Hello. Oh, people, I'm Jack. Wait. Oh. Okay, we go with the next one. I want to finish my right. Okay. How much time I pay? Maybe one more half hour. Something. Okay. Get in here. I'm back.
That is so ratchet.
Oh, No way, no way. Oh, okay, okay. Wow. Oh, wait, yeah. Oh, okay. What's going on? Okay, maybe we done here. Thanks a while for you guys watching. Bye bye.